Duchess of Cornwall is right on cue during a visit to a children's charity in Pontypool.
And George North, all the way, what a try for George North!
And he's back in the starting lineup. Can George North repeat last season's performance against Scotland this Saturday? Good evening. The family of a couple found brutally murdered in South Africa say they are devastated by the news of their deaths. The bodies of Christine and Roger Solik, originally from the Cynon Valley, were found in a river around 50 miles from where they lived. James Williams has spent the day in Mountain Ash, where some of their family members still live. He sent us this report.
Inseparable and a relationship to aspire to. A tribute from four loving children to their parents, Christine and Roger Solik, born and bred in the Mountain Ash area of the Cynon Valley. I've just spoken to Christine's brother and sister at their family home where they're consoling their mother, and they're obviously devastated by the news and finding it quite difficult to comprehend actually that it was only last month that they saw Christine, who'd returned home to bury her father. A tight-knit community mourns.
People are very shocked by the news that we've heard, the brutality and the senselessness of the killings, and the thoughts of the community are very much with the family at this tragic time. My office manager knows the family and she's spoken to them already, and they said they're devastated, which is obviously understandable.
Married in the valleys, it was, however, South Africa where they made their life, moving there in 1981. Work, family and retirement would follow before enjoying their final days in the country's KwaZulu-Natal province, in a town not far from the picturesque Drakensberg Mountains. Police suspect they were kidnapped from their home in the town of Nottingham Road last Friday. Christine's body was found later that day in a river, bound and murdered 50 miles from their home in a gated community. Later, the couple's car was discovered abandoned in the KwaMadlala area. Roger, 66 years old and suffering from Parkinson's disease for the last 20 years, wouldn't be found until Monday, over a mile from where Christine's body was discovered. With around 51 murders a day in South Africa, violence is not uncommon. But elements of this case seem unusual.
There's a lot of shock, and the police are taking it incredibly seriously, because it is not normal in these kind of cases that people would be taken away from their home, kidnapped, and then killed somewhere else. That's pretty unusual. And so the police are really focusing on trying to find out what the motive is here, because it's not normal that happens. So there's still an awful lot of detail in this case to come out that hopefully will make things a bit more clear, because at the moment people are really not only frightened but very baffled by how this has happened.
From a small town in South Africa to a small town in the South Wales valleys, that shock at the murder of Christine and Roger Solik continues to reverberate.
James, the Foreign Office has said tonight that it will support the family in any way possible.
Yes, they have. Jennifer, a spokeswoman on behalf of the Foreign Office, has said that they're working closely with the local police and are happy to assist the family in any way possible, as you said. Meanwhile, the local police have said that they're working round the clock to try and catch the killers. Now, as I said in my piece, I've been here in Mountain Ash all day and I've been talking to Christine's family, and as I said, they're naturally devastated. And earlier this evening, I had an opportunity to speak to Christine's mother, Sheila Savage, who told me that Christine and Roger had been wonderful parents to their four lovely children. And then I asked her, well, what was Christine like? And she said she was chatty, just like her. Now, members of both families are going to leave the UK and fly out to South Africa on Saturday ahead of Tuesday's funeral service in Cape Town. And out in South Africa, they'll meet Christine and Roger's four children, who've released their own statement saying, please keep us in your thoughts and prayers.
James, thank you. The BBC has been accused of insulting Wales after it announced a new television channel and funding for Scotland worth nearly £40 million. It comes a day after it confirmed an £8.5 million investment here. Well, our arts and media correspondent Hugh Thomas has been taking a look at the numbers for us. Hugh.
Yes, Jen, this is an argument about the BBC's priorities and a perception of unfairness. Now, this morning in Glasgow, the BBC revealed it's investing £19 million of new money in Scotland, recruiting 80 journalists and launching a brand new channel with a nightly news programme featuring local and world news from a Scottish perspective. It'll also spend £20 million to increase the number of programmes that are made in Scotland and shown across the UK. Now, this has proved controversial today because it comes just a day after the announcement that an extra £8.5 million would be coming to Wales, mainly for new dramas, comedies and entertainment shows. Now, not all good news for those who'd been calling for an extra £30 million to be spent here, and politicians from different parties are saying it's unfair.
It's clear to me, whatever Scotland wants to do and how it wants to arrange its programming, that's fine for the BBC. But as one of the devolved nations, licence payers in Wales should get the same deal as licence payers in Scotland, and we're being shortchanged.
Now, the BBC denies that accusation, saying the new money it's spending in Wales will be transformational. It says spending on programmes made in Wales, like Doctor Who and Casualty, meant it was already way ahead of Scotland in making programmes for a UK-wide audience. Now, there's also the money the BBC spends on Welsh language output, including much of the budget for S4C. So at the end of the day, this boils down to what the audience wants. Viewers in Scotland have different needs from those in Wales, and the different choices being made require different levels of funding. Jen.
Here, thank you. Bosses at Aberthaw Power Station in the Vale of Glamorgan say cleaner coal from overseas will be used in future to ensure emissions targets are reached. EU judges ruled that the plant was pumping out illegal levels of air pollution and had to change the way it operates. Our environment correspondent, Stefan Messenger, has had rare access to see what the future holds for one of Wales' largest power plants.
This is the route that we're putting new investment on.
A guided tour of Aberthaw. This huge site, capable of powering 3 million UK homes, is at a turning point in its long history.
By 1967, this industrial wilderness will begin to look like this.
At the time it was built, it was hailed as one of the most advanced power stations in the world, designed to use Welsh coal, which takes longer to burn than alternatives. But as well as carbon emissions, that process produces toxic nitrogen oxide gases, which can harm people's health. And in September last year, the European Court of Justice ruled that Aberthaw was pumping out double the legal amount.
With the introduction of new legislation, we have to change our diet across from low volatile coal, the indigenous Welsh coals, across to high volatile coal, which unfortunately is only available outside of the UK.
The plant's operator, RWE, is investing £5 million in upgrading its boilers and conveyor belts to handle coal from places like Russia and Australia. It's also cutting its operating hours, focusing on supplying electricity only at times of peak demand, such as during winter. It means that from the end of the month, the vast majority of deliveries from Welsh open-cast mines will end.
For the people who work here, this is a really poignant scene, the penultimate delivery of coal from Tower Colliery here to Aberthaw. It's happening because the UK is shifting its energy mix away from burning fossil fuels like coal towards more low-carbon energy generation, renewable energy and new nuclear power plants like the one that's planned on Anglesey. The Westminster government wants to see all coal-fired power stations like Aberthaw closing by 2025.
But that's still 8 years away, and in the meantime, Aberthaw's manager believes it has an important role to play.
Although there's been periods this year when coal generation has fallen even to zero in the summer, when the margins are tight, the UK very much still needs the capability of the remaining coal plants. And that's where we see our future for the next few years.
Not everyone agrees, as this protest at the site last month made clear.
It is going to close as a result of government policy and the fact that it's very old. And isn't it time to start thinking beyond that rather than eking out a few little bit of extra profit from an ageing asset?
For the 200 or so staff, it's a challenging time. 35 are being made redundant. But Aberthaw's management team say the changes being put in place will mean they can keep generating power here until at least 2021.
Stefan Messenger reporting. A man from Pontypool has been jailed for 28 days for filming and live streaming a court case on Facebook. 39-year-old David Davis from Llantwit broadcast the footage on Monday as a witness gave evidence at Cardiff Crown Court. He was arrested when he returned yesterday and sentenced for contempt of court. Cameras are not allowed in courts in Wales and England. The number of cancer cases in Wales has risen by nearly 10% over a 10-year period. There were just over 19,000 diagnoses in 2015. That's compared to around 17,000 in 2006. Public Health Wales says the main reason for the increase is an ageing population. The Charity Commission has launched an investigation into a Flintshire animal shelter. Capricorn Animal Rescue near Mold looks after injured and abandoned animals, but welfare and financial concerns were highlighted by a BBC Wales investigation last year. The Charity Commission says it decided to act following complaints from the public and former volunteers.
It's a set of relief, really. I think that's the main feeling, relief that someone is actually being looked into, and hopefully that changes will be made urgently. It's quite concerning that they've frozen the bank account knowing that all the animals are still in that rescue, but we know there's a lot of people there ready to come in and help should there need be, but we're just grateful someone's actually paid attention and done something now.
Plans for a new M4 relief road should not go ahead. That's according to the Commissioner who advises Welsh ministers on sustainability. Sophie Howe, the Future Generations Commissioner, believes the plan is ill-conceived and not the most sustainable option. The Welsh Government wants to build the new motorway south of Newport to ease congestion at a cost of £1.1 billion. A public inquiry on the project starts next week. There are calls tonight for police widows to be granted a pension for life, even if they remarry or live with a new partner. New legislation from the Home Office means only the spouses of officers who die on duty will retain their pensions. Here's Matt Murray.
Deborah Poole moved from Cardiff to Ceredigion with her husband Russell when he retired from the police service. It was their dream to have a quieter life, so bought this small holding in Sarnau near Cardigan after he finished working. Russell had been a hard-working and decorated officer for South Wales Police. Deborah was just 47 when he died from cancer nearly 15 years ago and was left to bring up 3 young children. She receives a widow's pension of around £900 each month, which is vital for her with her younger son in university. But if she remarried or lived with a new partner, Deborah would lose that money.
I'm being made to choose between love and money. And my husband did work, he retired. He quite often put his life on the line for the job, and I'm not saying he never thought anything about it, that was his job. He loved his job. But he also paid 11% of his pay every month for his pension and for his family. So I do feel that this is wrong.
Deborah wants the regulations to change, and on this she's not alone. More than 115,000 people have signed a petition. They want the rules to be brought into line with Northern Ireland, which grants all police widows a pension for life. The Home Office says new legislation brought in last year means the spouses or partners of officers who die on duty will retain their pensions, even if they remarry.
The system changed a little bit for England and Wales from 1st of April 2015, but there's no retrospective change in it. There's a retrospective change in Northern Ireland where if widow or widowers have remarried, they've been able to get their pension repaid to them. And clearly, you know, people get into a situation where is it going to be a future happiness for them, or is it going to be how much money they've got in their pocket? And that's an unfair decision for people to make.
And that's where Deborah finds herself, unable to do what her husband wanted after his death and move on with her life.
You're watching Wales Today from the BBC. Still to come on the programme. He's the only change in the starting lineup on Saturday. Can George North repeat last year's success against Scotland? It was against the rules. Why more Welsh will now be heard in Parliament. The Duchess of Cambridge has been in Torfaen visiting a project which helps young people in care with mental health problems. It's her first visit to Wales as the official patron of the charity Action for Children. Paul Heaney was there. His report contains flash photography.
It's not what you might expect on a royal visit. But this mental health project in Pontypool is carefully aligned with a cause the Duchess of Cambridge has chosen to champion: children's mental health. Foster carers and parents told her about the expert support they've received from staff here. The charity Action for Children has been commissioned for the past 12 years to provide the service by Torfaen Council and the local health board.
Lots of our children come from very difficult histories and backgrounds, so for them to have, the Duchess come and celebrate with them the changes they've made to their lives is really important.
Craig was one of the first people to meet the Duchess today, one of many young people here taken into care after a difficult relationship with his birth family. He told me he used to get angry in school and storm out of class.
I was getting into trouble loads of times, but now I'm just settling down really well. I've been doing anger management when I get angry, doing all that stuff.
That makes a really big difference, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It means you don't go out of class,
No.
you do more work in school and you feel a lot better as well.
Yeah.
And what was it like meeting the Duchess of Cambridge?
Really good, but nervous, nerve-wracking.
Is she any good at pool?
A bit,
A bit.
yeah,
Not as good as you.
no.
Things have now improved so much for Craig, he's considering going back to his birth family. Proof that the life-changing event of being taken into care doesn't have to affect life chances. A fair few questions from 8-year-old Papa D and 10-year-old Chloe, a quick cooch, and then on to the next engagement. The Queen was the charity's patron until last year, the Duchess picking up today where she left off.
Paul Heaney reporting. Now, some MPs have tried it, but it's been against the rules until now. Speaking Welsh in Parliament. Last year, the government said the translation costs would be too high, but now the rules are changing to allow Welsh to be spoken in some debates. It's a campaign that's gone on for years, as our parliamentary correspondent David Cornock reports.
Parliament likes its rules. No T-shirts with slogans.
Can I tell honourable member there's standards of dress that members must comply with?
No clapping. No singing.
Order!
And no debating in Welsh.
Ond mae'r heniaeth yn y tir, ac a lawen hen yn fyw.
Order, I hope the honourable gentleman will do the Hansard writers the great courtesy of providing them the text of that which he's just so eloquently read to the House.
Nearly every rule that Parliament has is broken in some way or other. I mean, theoretically, the rule is that the language of Parliament is English. But, of course, when Her Majesty signs off bills, she does it in Norman French.
Last year, the government said allowing MPs to speak Welsh at Westminster would be too expensive. So why the change of heart?
Every single penny of the additional cost incurred will be within the current budgets of the House. So the fact that we have been sensible about our approach, we've actually looked at what this actually means from a fiscal point of view, means that we can reflect the legal status of the Welsh language without bearing any further cost to the taxpayer.
The change will apply only to the Welsh Grand Committee, a forum for the 40 Welsh MPs that has few powers and rarely meets.
In fact, the Welsh Grand hasn't met for a year. But the next time its members gather here at Westminster, their debate will, for the first time, be bilingual.
The change of heart has been widely welcome.
Often I've been in Welsh Grand debates where the majority of people attending the debate would be Welsh speakers. You know, late on a Thursday afternoon in Westminster Hall, a majority of people you normally speak Welsh to if conversing in private. So it'll be natural for most of us to actually have a chance to debate in Welsh, and I think it's a very welcome step forward.
But don't expect to hear Welsh used much in the chamber of either the Commons or the House of Lords.
La reine le vote.
There, Norman French remains the language of choice for special occasions.
Rugby and George North will return to Wales' starting lineup for Saturday's Six Nations clash against Scotland at Murrayfield. He's recovered from a leg injury that sidelined him for Wales' 21-16 loss to England earlier this month and replaces Alex Cuthbert. It's the only change, with Wales boss Rob Howley retaining a back row of Sam Warburton, Justin Tipuric and Ross Moriarty. Talupe Faletau is on the bench again. Scrum 5's Ross Harris is here now. Ross, how much of an impact could George North have on the weekend?
A pretty big impact here. He's a world-class player. Wales look like a different team with him in their starting lineup. You know, the way he took that try against Italy when he last played, sensational, really. You mentioned his leg injury. He already had that leg injury, and it didn't stop him running from 70 yards or whatever it was. Good record against Scotland. He scored a try against them last year. He's actually scored a try in each of his last 5 Six Nations games, which is a record he owns jointly with 8 other players. If he scores this weekend, he'll be the only player out on his own to score 6 consecutive tries in, and not just the Six Nations, the 5 Nations, in every tournament that preceded it. So he is worth a try again, effectively, but you have to be on his defensive mettle as well, because Scotland's back 3 probably the most potent in the Championship. You know, you've got Tommy Seymour, Sean Maitland and Stuart Hogg, who's on sensational try-scoring form himself.
So Wales have had a long winning streak against Scotland. Do you think they can make it 10 in a row?
The bookies think so. They've got them as marginal favourites. You know, some people thought Scotland were the dark horses this year, and their opening win against Ireland had a surge of optimism in Scotland, but they've been brought a little bit back down to earth by that defeat against France in Paris. And Wales have bullied them over the years. They've not lost to Scotland, as you say, since Warren Gatland took over in 2008. And often they have bullied them up front, which is what France did last week. And those victories, there's been 9 of them in a row, an average of 15 points. So they normally win quite healthily against Scotland, home or away, so they've got the psychological edge over them as well. Scotland, it must be said, suffering with some key injuries. Their captain, Greg Laidlaw, is out. He's not just their captain, he's their goal kicker as well. Josh Strauss, their biggest and best ball carrier, is missing. So the bookies do have the marginal favourites, but both teams will be desperate for victory, because having both lost one each now, if they lose another, they're out of contention for the Six Nations. So it's win or bust for both Wales and Scotland.
Ross, thank you. Well, there are weather warnings in place ahead of that game on Saturday. Sue's here now. How's it looking?
Well, Jed, thanks. Yes, wet and very windy weather overnight into tomorrow. The Met Office has issued those warnings for Storm Doris, bringing heavy rain at times, and a warning that gusts could reach 70 to 80 miles per hour along the North Wales coast. Now, this is the rapidly deepening area of low pressure. Storm Doris arriving overnight into tomorrow, which has the potential to bring down trees and cause travel disruption. So tonight, some dry spells, otherwise rain, heavy at times. Overnight turning increasingly windy, with another band of rain spreading in from the northwest in the early hours, strengthening southwesterly winds. Overnight lows of 4 to 9 Celsius. Now, the rain is at its heaviest first thing tomorrow, easing through the morning, but then the wind picks up. Gales on high ground along coastlines. Brighter spells developing later, wintry showers too, but remaining very windy. Now, most of Wales covered by a yellow warning, but an amber warning issued across much of North Wales for the strength of the wind. The white arrows are the average wind speeds, but gusts of 70, 80 miles per hour possible along exposed coasts, and it will feel colder. So tomorrow night, the storm clears eastwards, a chance of a few wintry showers, then turning colder overnight, winds slowly easing, drier and quieter, but colder, with a frost risk early Friday, but generally fine, brighter and breezy on Friday, but with cloud thickening and rain starting to arrive from the northwest later in the day. So after a wet and very windy Thursday with Storm Doris, fine for a time on Friday, and then rain and strengthening winds spread eastwards overnight Friday into Saturday. Some drier spells for a time on Saturday before another front arrives from the west, bringing rain again later Saturday. And Sunday could be fine at first, with rain later in the day. And for more localised detail about Storm Doris, there's a smartphone app, and you can check out the special Explainer video forecast online. Jen.
Thanks. A reminder of our top story tonight. The family of a couple found brutally murdered in South Africa say they are devastated by the news of their deaths. The bodies of Christine and Roger Solik, originally from the Cynon Valley, were found in a river around 50 miles from where they lived. And that's Wales Today. I'll have a quick update at 8 and a full roundup after the BBC's 10 o'clock news. From all of us on the programme, hwyl fawr i chi. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.